Welcome, boys and girls, to, what is this, episode number 10?
10.
10.
This is
Episode 10
Big
of-
10. Woohoo!
We made it to 10!
We made it to 10.
Can you guys believe it?
Oh my god,
From cameras to couches, here we
we're
are.
at a decade of Cameras to Couches episodes. This is,
A decade?
This is weekly highlight number 5.
You're here with Emmy Davis and Zach Davis, as always, boys and girls.
I'm
Here
Emmy.
we go.
I'm Emmy. Hello, nice to meet you.
I'm Zach.
We're out here having a good old evening. We're doing our weekly highlight tonight. This is a little bit of an untraditional episode because typically how we do these is we like to put out a vote to you guys to where you can have a little bit of input onto what we're going to do for the week. But this week is Thanksgiving, and it's a Davis family tradition.
This week is not Thanksgiving. Next week is Thanksgiving.
This
we're
week is
getting in
breaking
the holiday
into Thanksgiving
spirit.
season.
We're getting in the holiday spirit.
The spirits of the holiday. I've had plenty of spirits of the holiday this evening, and we decided collectively that we were just going to force upon you one of our Davis family traditions, which is planes, trains, and automobiles.
What a great flick.
It's awesome stuff. So we're going to do that as the first half of this episode. The second half of this episode has been, I've been ruminating on this today, and I decided that we were just going to do a little block about it. But I want to highlight a special director that we've come across over the past couple of weeks. This is Mr. Adam Elliot, well known for a lot of his claymated films. Most recently, Memoir of a Snail, which we got a couple of weeks ago.
Which you may have heard us gush about on a weekend roundup.
It's what got me into him, and I progressively just started working back through his stuff. So we're going to talk about him a little bit in the second half of this episode. But let's start from the top. Let's talk about planes, trains, and automobiles. If you guys know anything about this movie, this is a slapstick comedy from the 1980s. Very fun Davis family movie. We've been watching this one for years. We've been watching it since we had to fast forward through some of the scenes because they were too inappropriate for us.
I think this is actually the first time that the youngest Davis family member had been able to watch this without any fast forwarding.
It was pretty magical. It was pretty magical watching Daniel watch like one of the best crash out movies or crash out scenes in a movie ever. It's just a super fun, lighthearted story about two unlikely compadres who find themselves traveling together to try and get home on the holidays, particularly for Thanksgiving. So, Steve Martin as Neil Page, John Candy as Del Griffith, and Layla Robbins as Susan Page. But really, like, Steve Martin and John Candy are the big stars of the show here. There's a couple of really good cameos too. Kevin Bacon, Chuck from Better Call Saul.
Michael McKean.
Michael McKean, thank you. I couldn't think of his real name.
What's her name? Edie McMahon? McMagoo?
Miss
Oh,
Edie.
boy.
McClurg.
McClurg.
It's Edie McClurg. Shows up as
I was close enough.
a fantastic car salesman. Or not used car salesman. That's
mean,
Angel
hey,
of Light. I'm
I
still
was
thinking
gonna
about Angel
say.
of Light. This is just a nice romp. Let's dig into it a little bit. I feel like there's no better way to rip the Band-Aid off this than just getting into it. So
Before we break into the synopses, I would like to mention that this was directed by John Hughes.
Mr. John Hughes himself, quite the master of these kind of comedies, and this is kind of a breakaway for him. It's got more dramatic elements in it. It's far from a drama, but it has a lot more dramatic and heartfelt moments in it, particularly delivered by John Candy's character Del.
He'd already made Breakfast Club at this point, though, right?
Yeah, I guess that's true.
I was going to say, I kind of disagree with you on that.
Yeah. No, Mr. Hughes had definitely been like a very foundational part of mainstream movie making for a good while now. I mean, he definitely had some blockbusters under his belt. So this comes out and people hail it immediately as like one of the best and favorite holiday movies. There's some parts of it that don't age particularly well, but it is still just an incredibly fun one. It's one that's very, very close to me personally. I'm very close to all of our family personally.
I was going to say.
Let's break into it. So this opens on an advertising salesman, Neil Page. He's concluding a business trip to New York City, and he's trying to get home for Thanksgiving. He goes through several series of obstacles in order to get there. First off, to
get to the airport before his...
To get to the airport and
just in general.
In general. But he starts off like hailing a taxi. He has to race a guy for a taxi, who's cameoed by Kevin Bacon. He makes it to the airport, finds out while they're on the plane that the plane is going to get grounded. It's going to get grounded in where is it? Wichita?
Wichita,
Yeah, so it starts in Wichita. So they get grounded in Wichita. He's trying to get back to Chicago. They get grounded in Wichita. He meets this guy that had stolen his cab previously. There's immediately bad blood between them.
Not so much on John Candy's character's part, but Steve Martin is just kind of like, he's a Scrooge.
Yeah, he's very, very, very self-centered guy, but like just trying to get home to his family.
Just a busy man wants to go home and see his family.
Yeah, he's just trying to get everything taken care of. So he works his way home. He comes across Dell. They form like this unlikely compadre sensibility. It turns into like a bit of an anti-buddy comedy. And they just
incredibly entertaining banter between the two of them.
They just continue through these like ridiculous scenarios where they.
One of my notes for this is that this whole movie feels like a really excellent, like, classic SNL skit.
Yeah, for sure, and that's just like the beautiful thing about these '80s comedies is that they just flow at that clipping pace where they're just so focused on delivering the jokes and the funny scenarios for you. But yeah, they get grounded in Wichita. They have to get a hotel together. They end up sleeping in the same hotel room, and finding out that there's only one bed trope. Now, if you know John Candy, he's not exactly a lithe guy, so it's pretty like nice physical comedy to see him taking up like 3/4 of the bed, and Steve Martin
because it's like a full size bed, like it's not a big bed.
He's like a very disorganized person versus Steve Martin. I mean, this hotel room, and we were talking about the set design of this earlier. It is scummy, and then
there's dirt on the walls, just like handprints.
I made the joke that special shout out to the set designers of this, but they probably just had to find a hotel room in Wichita, Kansas.
That's just a location scout.
Congratulations to whoever you were, because if you stayed in that hotel before, you now have lice. It's so funny. They end up going to bed together, waking up the next morning, and like John Candy is kissing Steve Martin's ear, and they're unknowingly fondling each other.
These are both men that are used to sleeping with their wives.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's just kind of like the funny subconscious, like, I don't know. I love that scene so much.
It's incredible.
Those aren't pillows. Steve Martin's like, why did you kiss my ear? John Candy's like, why are you holding my hand? It's so great.
Where's your other hand? So they leave the hotel. They get back on the road. They have this guy, Dell, I forgot to mention, is a traveling shower curtain salesman. Shower curtain ring salesman.
Which he uses to, like, apparently must be good at it.
He's really
always
charismatic.
Like,
he's super
like,
charismatic.
Oh, I met this guy selling shower curtain rings to him. He's gonna get us into the hotel, even though it's booked up.
Yeah, he continuously has like these ridiculous connections like throughout the movie. Yeah. One of which gets them out of the hotel. It's the son of a guy that had he had sold shower curtain rings to before, and they
sold shower curtain rings to everybody. Honestly, like
it's hilarious. I didn't know that people still needed shower curtain rings like that, but well,
you do.
Yeah,
sometimes they don't come with a shower curtain.
Yeah, these are Walter Cronkite mood rings. So they just go through like this series of events. They try to take a train. The train breaks down in Missouri. They try to get from the train to a rental car station where they end up parting ways. Steve Martin goes to get a rental car. He goes out to the lot where the rental car is supposed to be parked. It's not there. He comes back inside. This is the end of his rope. He just starts like completely breaking down in the way that only Steve Martin can.
He loses it on this poor like car rental salesperson lady.
That exchange is going to be in my favorite quotes. We're gonna do the back and forth on that one. We're
keeping the synopsis very brief this time.
Yeah, but basically they just go through like a continually exciting series of events. They eventually get in a rental car, but they get back together. Dell has managed to find a rental car, and they end up driving back. They end up like catching the car on fire. The car completely burns down. It gets impounded by a state trooper. They manage to finally get home. Towards the end of the journey, Steve Martin starts having a realization that Dell has like doesn't maybe really have a place to go. Dell this whole time has been talking about his wife Marie and how he's just looking to get home to her and how he hadn't been home in several years and that kind of stuff. And he's got like a really touching monologue at one point about halfway through the movie when they're in the hotel together about how he doesn't need Steve Martin to like who he is. Like, he likes who he is, and his wife
I'm
likes
a real
who he is.
article. I'm just
what you see is
me.
what you get. But Steve Martin realizes as he's like finally about to board the train home that Del maybe doesn't have a place to go. So he goes back to Del, finds him in the train station, and Del tells him that his wife has actually passed away. He, out of companionship and just like the brotherhood that they formed together over the past several days, offers Del to come to their house for Thanksgiving, and brings Del home, introduces him to the family, and we get a nice happy Thanksgiving ending. This one is just awesome.
A great movie.
Just a joy.
Just a great journey, like traveling movie. I love traveling movies. I love movies where it's just one thing, like one inconvenience after the other, and this is certainly that.
I have so much fun with this movie every time we watch it. Now, like we said at the top of this is a Davis family tradition. We had Mom, Dad, and Danny over tonight to watch this, and we were all just raucously laughing at this whole thing.
Like, we own this movie on VHS and have been watching it.
Yeah, we've owned this movie on every form of physical media, from VHS to Steelbook 4K. Like, and that is just a testament to the kind of stuff that we like. I mean, we ended up watching like a brief bit on the 4K about. There was like a tribute to John Candy and just some of the cast talking about him and that kind of stuff, because of course he passed away in '94. He is so perfectly cast in this. Like, he hadn't really done a whole lot of deeply dramatic roles up to this point, but the moments where he's like quieter and not the comic relief in this are really just stand out. Siskel and Ebert, I didn't write this down, but I actually noted it earlier when I was looking into this. I think it was Siskel said that this was the best casting of John Candy or the best character that he's ever done, and I gotta say I agree with that in a lot of capacities. John Candy is so authentically himself in every role that he's in that it's hard to really put my thumb on that, but I really do think that this is just an outstanding performance.
And he has such a talent for it, where he is authentically himself, but he also like just really takes on these roles so well that it's not like you're watching Nick Cage and you just see Nick Cage on the screen. You don't just see John Candy. You see his character.
I really just... It's very heartwarming. It is very 80s core. I mean, the synth, the soundtrack, everything
yes.
is just...
What a great soundtrack. The like, I guess the soundtrack that was probably written for the film is just so... Like you said, the synth. So fun. So 80s. I love it. And then
so
there's
goofy.
also just so many great songs. Like...
Just a genuinely goofy movie, a very inherently male core movie. There's a lot of just like boy jokes in this. There's a big bit that John Candy does about how Steve Martin's character fidgets with his testicles a lot, and he's just like, you play with your balls more than Larry Bird. It's so funny. So we just love this movie. This one truly just was one of those things where I was like, oh, Mom and Dad are letting me watch something extra special tonight.
And I don't think I've ever watched this movie outside of like Thanksgiving. Like, I think that I've kept that a very timely tradition, or not timely, but like... Yeah,
we've probably been watching this movie
tradition
for Thanksgiving for, I mean, on and off for 15 years or so. I mean, it's really just deeply ingrained into our relationship with our family. So it's just a real joy. So let's talk about some favorite scenes. And favorite scenes and favorite quotes kind of go hand in hand with this movie. I personally think.
I completely agree. There's the aforementioned "those aren't pillows," which or not. We didn't get into it, but the scene with them in the hotel when they wake up, and it's just so it never fails to make me laugh.
Those aren't pillows.
Every time when he kisses his ear, and then he's like, "Did you just kiss my ear? Why are you holding my hand? Where's your other hand?" It's so great.
Before this, they get into an argument with each other, and they almost end up spending the night apart. And I think my favorite Steve Martin line in this movie is, "How would you like a mouthful of teeth?" I love that one. Another
line, scene, duo, or just scene, really, because you can't pick a specific line from this one, but this scene with Jesse Son Owen is just it's like literally Dad was dying at
Oh my
this.
God, just
because it is just so
cackling.
So great. Like, I mean, like you said earlier, physical comedy, that's one of the most important aspects of this movie.
We don't have a lot of stuff like that anymore.
No, people don't do it anymore. It's kind of, I think it's seen as like not
it's
like,
it's from a different age. I mean,
that's exactly what I was like trying to.
A lot of people have grown out of it. We actually kind of went down a rabbit hole after this. We ended up watching 2 Chris Farley sketches back to back, and I mean, the Chris Farley sketches, the Patrick Swayze Chippendale sketch, and the Van Down by the River sketch. And Danny had never seen those before, so it was fun to introduce him to those. But just, they truly do not make stuff like this anymore, and it's so fun. Like, those old SNL bits are just wonderful. The next scene I had on my list is another favorite quote, and this is, like I said earlier, one of the most epic crash outs ever put to screen. This is when Steve Martin's character finds out that the rental car is not in the spot that the agency told him that it was, and he has to walk like across a runway, across a highway to get all the way back to the terminal, and he gets up to the counter, and the woman says, "Well, you're fucked." Yeah, I adore that scene. It is
she's so great.
Fun.
She improvises her lines. I also have some of her lines. When he comes into the car rental place, she's on the phone. And she's talking to, like, clearly, like, a friend or something, or a family member that she's going to have Thanksgiving with.
Like her sister, and they're arguing about
at some point, she's, like, getting off the phone. She goes, gobble, gobble. Yeah. And
it's turkey time. Gobble, gobble. That's the Ben Affleck J-Lo quote.
I had to mention one of my other favorite lines that is at the beginning of the movie, and it's just a line. It's in the scene where he's trying to get a cab, and this other guy kind of hails a cab, and he offers him $20 to take the cab from him, and he says, "Can I appeal to your good nature?" And the guy goes, "I don't have a good nature." I love how New York that is, and he's just like, "Nope, my cab, bye."
That whole exchange is so awesome. He's like, "How about $50?" And he's like, "Agreed."
He's like, "Well, if you're willing to pay $50 for a cab."
a guy that was willing
to
pay $50 for a cab would surely be willing to pay $75. Oh man, it's just such good, just bantery dialogue.
I love that one.
Yeah, How Would You Like Mouthful of Teeth is my 5-star one.
I also, what do you think the temperature is? One. When they're driving and Owen, the redneck crazy guy, they're driving in the back of the bed of his pickup truck with his dog.
This is the great-great-grandson of the guy from Northern Lights.
Literally. They're sitting back there, and they're driving from Wichita at this point, right?
Yeah, yeah.
They literally just look at each other. He's like, "What do you think the temperature is?" And, like, there's snow building up on their mustaches, and he just says 1.
There's so much good, like, slapsticky humor like that. There's a point where Steve Martin, after he has his freak out, gets kicked in the balls, and for the next scene, they pitch his voice up, just like classic little bits like that. I think that is just a joy. Yeah, I really just love.
I also have. If I wanted a joke, I would have followed you into the John.
Oh, it's so good. More heartfelt one, but like the one that has been A, memed to death, and B, is just like the most resonant part of this movie is John Candy doing his monologue where he says, "You want to hurt me? Go right ahead. If it makes you feel any better, I'm an easy target." And he talks about, I like me. My wife likes me. I don't need to be anything but myself. What you see is what you get.
The real article, what you see is what you get.
I don't know why, but I keep thinking of, there's this scene in Family Guy where Peter Griffin says that, and I don't watch Family Guy, but I've seen that scene so many times that it just makes me think of him every time. But I really do just love that scene. This is just top notch stuff. Let's
before we move on from the favorite scenes, I have to mention the shot of them carrying the trunk down the road to Neil's house at the end of the movie, because it's such a great shot. I mean, after all it's a
good heartfelt
annoyance and everything that John Candy's character has caused Steve Martin's, and all that they've pushed each other through, and
he finally gets over his selfish.
And they're just sitting there working together, carrying this big ass trunk, and just smiling the whole way.
It's not complicated, and it doesn't need to be. It's just heartwarming. It's just those little little things.
This is a very simple, straightforward movie, but it is so good.
It doesn't need to be anything more than that. I have so much fun with this every time I watch it. Let's break into some fun facts. Let's talk a little bit about this. So, for starters, this is John Candy and Steve Martin's favorite film of their own.
I have that one too.
They both loved this movie. There's a really touching scene in the recent Steve Martin documentary where he's going through a bunch of his old scripts, and he finds the original script for Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which had an extended monologue from John Candy's character at the end of the movie. At the end of the movie, when Neil goes back to the train station to find Del and offer for him to come home, Del reveals that his wife has passed away. And it's pretty much just a one-line, like, throwaway thing. He's like, Marie's been dead for 8 years. But that was originally a much longer monologue, and in the documentary, Steve is reading from, like, this leather-bound binder that had the script in it, and he starts, like, just reading through the monologue. He can't even, like, say it out loud, and he just starts breaking down. It's super, super gut-wrenching.
Kind of going off of that and just having that deleted scene, this movie originally was a 145-page script.
God dang.
Typically, like, I mean, just for context, we're typically looking at half of that, but not half of that,
especially
but like a 90-page
like
script.
Such a comedy like this.
Yes, and he made a 3-hour cut of this movie.
Damn.
That is somewhere in Paramount, I think, Paramount's warehouse, and Hughes has said that, like, at this point the film is probably deteriorated and it's just it's just lost.
There was some restored scenes and some restored footage of this movie. I know that there were a couple of pieces. I didn't really look through the bonuses on the 4K that I got, but I need to check that out and just kind of dig through, because there were some good things on there. It didn't look like there were any, like, explicit deleted scenes. But I'm sure there's some leftover footage from stuff. There was a lot of BTS footage and that kind of stuff,
But yeah, as we mentioned before, Edie McClurg, she improvised all of her lines in the car rental scene. That whole phone conversation she's having is all her just rambling, and I love it. Again, as we mentioned, Michael McKean, he's on screen for like 90 seconds, but he has the 4th billing at the end of this movie.
Yeah.
Like, when the credits roll, you see Steve Martin, John Candy, Linda, I can't remember her last name, and then it's Michael McKean.
Which is just awesome. Michael McKean, for those of you who don't know, Mom and Dad know him from something much different, but I know him from Better Call Saul, which is my favorite television show of all time. This is Spinal Tap. That's another just exceptional role of his. He's awesome. He does not have a lot of screen time in this movie, but every time he's on, he's a scene stealer.
I forgot to mention this when I was talking about the longer script, but at some point during the movie, they're riding with a truck driver, and John Candy's character just kind of inexplicably shows up with a black eye, and he mentions, like, in passing something about, the truck driver doesn't like people riding up front with him.
Yeah.
But that's kind of all the explanation you get, and there is a scene where he gets punched by the truck driver, and why can't we find that? Where is that, please?
There's no... I think it almost works better for the pacing of this movie.
Oh, for sure. But gosh,
definitely.
I hope that's a deleted scene that's accessible to find, and not just something that was written.
I wonder if that's something they took out for the sake of Steve Martin's line later in the movie after Del burns the car down, and he says, "You finally did it to yourself," because
maybe
there's really no moments of Del actively... He's
the truck driving comes after the car burning, doesn't it?
Yeah, you're right, it does. Scratching everything I said. Edie McClurg, Emily mentioned her a bit earlier, but the car salesman, she, at the end of the big freak out, thank you, car rental. At the end of the big freak out, she tells Steve Martin that he's fucked, and to this day she still has people walk up to her and be like, "Can you tell me that I'm fucked?" It's just beautiful.
Here's a fun one, and I'm sorry, the fun facts this is like my favorite segment that we do for the weekly highlight. I have so much fun researching this. I have so much fun talking about it, so I feel bad when I steal from you. But this one's just really great. Hughes originally wanted to cast Tom Hanks as Neil and John Travolta as Del, and
oh no! Oh, Del!
Can you imagine
Del! Oh my God!
Forrest
Del!
Gump driving around with
Del!
Vincent.
I hope that.
Because that's all I could see. That's all I could see.
Tom Hanks is there's a running gag on the Rewatchables podcast where they have a section where they say, would Tom Hanks or Tom Cruise be better in this role? And it's for like every movie, and imagining Tom Hanks in any role aside from like what he's done, and maybe a few that he already has done, is just hilarious. What an actor! Kevin Bacon. If you didn't notice, Kevin Bacon is the guy that races Neil at the beginning of this movie to the cab, and it's just a young Kevin Bacon in his prime.
Which this was also his. He technically has 2 cameos in this movie because this leads into another fun fact. At some point when
Good segue.
Thank you. At some point when we're kind of having this scene that's flashing between Steve Martin and Neil sleeping in bed, and then his wife back home sleeping in bed. She's watching this movie, and it's John Hughes' next project. She's having a baby, which has Kevin Bacon in it, and so like I just think that's so cool. He's kind of in this movie twice, and that John Hughes was also like a little sneak peek, a little snack for the folks.
Yeah, authentically, not a good movie, but very funny that it's just in there. I really appreciate when people do stuff like that, alluding to what's coming up. Did you have any more fun facts?
I have one more, and it is. Do you have any more?
No, I'm
okay. John Hughes based this loosely off of something that happened to him in his real life.
Damn it, I did have that one. I forgot to mention it.
He took him 5 days to get home one time, and he was just kind of like, hey.
What if I wrote a story about fellas trying to get home for the holiday?
I mean.
Get home to their families.
Here we are. And then, like, almost 30 years later, some kids are just talking about it on a podcast.
Here we are. It's a family tradition for us.
I love that.
Love this movie. If I were to pick a double feature for it, we were kind of talking about this with Mom and Dad earlier. I think that this is a good one to cap off the Thanksgiving season and begin the Christmas season. My double feature pick for this was Christmas Vacation. It just break right into the holiday season by closing off your Thanksgiving life with this and starting up your Christmas life with Christmas Vacation.
I have Christmas Vacation under my if you like that, you'll like this, because I was trying to avoid a double feature holiday movie, but also if I could, I wanted to find a Thanksgiving movie, but I struggled with that a little bit. So I went with another John Candy movie. I went Cool Runnings because, I mean, I think that these are 2 good slapstick comedies to throw on the screen. Have your family over, have some friends over, you just got them playing in the background. You can talk over them and re-engage with them at any point. You can watch them from front to back and be totally entertained.
Yeah,
also,
Cool Runnings is another
you got to mention Home Alone too, just because.
Yeah, for sure.
Again, John Candy.
Home Alone and Home Alone 2. My if you like that, you'll like this is Dirty Rotten Scoundrels, because Steve Martin, another just great physical performance from him. As he's just a scumbag in this movie. They are so funny. It's him and golly, why am I blanking on this?
Is it
Michael Caine? And Michael Caine and him are playing like these scam artists that are pitting heads against each other, and Michael Caine, of course, is like the proper English version of a scam artist, and Steve Martin plays like this just raucous American guy that's just bumping into people and bumbling all over the place. It's really just magical stuff. There's a lot of like not well aged sexual comedy in it, but it's still very funny. I really do love this movie. This is just a treat for anybody that's looking for just like a nice, easy watch that's a heartwarming holiday season kind of thing. So thank you for listening to us talk about Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Do you have anything else you want to say on
it? Not particularly about Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. And I just wanted to mention before we move on to our director highlight that hit us with Christmas movie recommendations.
For sure.
I want to start getting into that a little bit. I'm hoping to do.
'Tis the season.
To do a roundup of just Christmas movies at some point. I think that'd be cool.
Yeah. Target has been celebrating Christmas for 2 months now, so I think it's about time that we get around to the curve. I've always been a kind of person that is very late to Christmas in American Macy's parade standards.
I was gonna say I'm kind of a middle of November. I'll start thinking about it.
Yeah, I do not buy Christmas presents before Black Friday. That's the kind of person I am. But
I disagree with that. That's enough about the commercialization of Christmas.
Yeah,
let's talk about
move
some
on.
Australians.
Let's move on to what I really have been excited to talk about. So I texted Emmy earlier today and I was like, hey, I want to do this director highlight because I've been watching this guy's movies and short films for this week, and like we said at the top of this is Adam Elliot. He's an Australian filmmaker. He works primarily in stop motion claymation. He's been around since about 1996. He actually produced a short film in 96 while he was at university. Moved into like producing an actual short film in 96 and has continued all the way through until this year with Memoir of a Snail. But I wanted to talk about him because I think he really tackles some like very important themes, and the way that he uses like morbid comedy is outstanding. I really have never seen anything like it, and his Australian coda is so perfect. I really just...
Anything he creates is just so, like, not unique in its own, but, like, it has his fingerprints just literally all over it because it's claymation and you can see the fingerprints in the clay. I didn't even mean to say that, but, like...
No, you're absolutely
like, literally
right.
Everything he makes is so...
You see a through line in every single one of his projects. He frequently deals with themes of damaged families and alcoholism, depression, mental and physical disabilities, and the tragically misunderstood nature of them in the early 20th century and late 20th century, particularly cerebral palsy, Tourette's, and Asperger's, mental degradation, Alzheimer's, dementia, loneliness, found families, misuse of religion. Like there are so many important things that he's talking about in these, and he really carefully goes about all of them.
He deals with them in such a just wonderful way.
Yeah, we talked a little bit about Memoir of a Snail's dealing with religion and how it's got like it
deals with the radicalized.
Yeah, the like, radicalization religion of it, like like I said, the misuse of it. But he consistently just tackles all these things and still manages to put in his own little bits into every bit. So, like I said, he's been working since 1966. He's got several shorts and 2 features under his belt now.
1996.
Sorry, 1966.
I was like, wow.
That's when they were still physically abusing mental patients.
That's when his stuff is set.
But like every one of his films is a tragic comedy, so it will almost guaranteed always make you tear up. Like he's got short films that range from 4 minutes long to 22 minutes long, and every single one of them is just absolute magic for how he portrays people, how he talks about these tough issues. And he's got like this art style that is so morbid, but it's all caricatures.
I saw somebody say it's like if Tim Burton like did claymation Peanuts characters, and
they're like, nobody's beautiful in his universes.
No.
There's no beauty in all of this. They're all deeply flawed, not necessarily ugly, but just not good to look at people. And I think that really well conveys the stuff that he's tackling. Truly, each of his films is like a labor of love, and some of the like similar stuff, that the imagery that comes across in it is that he has a lot of pets, something that he very clearly holds near and dear to his heart, that include birds, fish, snails, and dogs and cats, often shown in pairs named Sonny and Cher, which is just an awesome little bit. Gravestone engravings, you'll see this. Like if you pay attention to any of the gravestones that are in these films, every one of them has like a funny tagline. Not so much in some of the earlier stuff, but you go into like Mary and Max and Memoir of a Snail, and they just have like these perfect little taglines about how people died. The nude form of self-conscious people, and like I said earlier, he doesn't really deal with like beautiful people. These are the forms of people that are typically like just worried about how they look. Factory work is another big thing on his list, and just low class in general. I don't think there's a single rich person in any of his movies that is like even remotely near there may be some in passing, but he very clearly does not. Those aren't the stories he wants to tell. Misfits and social sensibilities that they miss out on, and that we ultimately misunderstand them for. Eccentric details of people. This is my favorite one. The way he describes like the way that people smell. He's like, this person smelled like pine needles, and this person smelled like licorice and old books, and this person smelled like urine. It's just so cheery, and it ultimately
it feels like you're reading a book almost. Like the way that he describes people, like he gives you that descriptive imagery, even though he's showing it to you on the screen, and it just really puts you there, even though you're, like I said, I don't know. It feels like a book that somebody put on screen, even though it's completely not.
Almost all of his films. I think Memoir of a Snail to a lesser degree, and I haven't seen his film Between, Max and Memoir of a Snail, which is Ernie Biscuit, which came out in 2015.
A short film, right?
Yeah, that is, I think, a 32-minute short film. But almost all of these deal with a narrator. Typically a pretty high build narrator. After his first couple of shorts, Jeffrey Rush is actually the narrator for Harvey Crumpet, which we actually just watched before we started the podcast. I watched it last night for the first time. I was just floored by it. So it's actually what sparked me to go further down the rabbit hole with the rest of his shorts. But ultimately, like my MO for just this director highlight in general is a quote from his films, and it's that life is understood backwards, and that's kind of how I've approached him in general. I started with Memoir of a Snail. I worked my way all the way back through his catalog, like from Z to A, and it's just really cool to see like his consistent vision, the things that he is really focused on conveying.
But I have to say the rest of that quote, the full quote is life is. Sorry, what was the beginning of it?
Life is.
Oh my gosh, look at us both. You just said it.
Life is understood backwards.
Life is understood backwards, but it's lived, but you have to live it forwards. That's what it is. Life is understood backwards, but you have to live it forwards.
I'll tell you what, I'm going to be living forward through these films for a while. So let's get a little bit into like just a quick dialogue about his catalog of movies. So the first one, he did a short film before this, but it's smaller. I couldn't find it. But his first big production was Uncle in 1996. This is the first of what is now referred to as a trilogy of family commentaries that he does, and this is a brief story talking about this uncle that he had. One of the things that I want to note at the top of this is that in his terms, in a very applicable style to his work, the truth should not get in the way of a good story. So he fictionalizes a couple of parts of these stories just to make the flow of it all better. But it follows this narrator as a young boy talking about his relationship with his uncle, who's a goofy but sad man who loves to talk about his life experiences with his nephew. This was made on a budget of 4,000 Australian dollars, which back in 96 was like $5,400 US today. It was shot on a 16mm Bolex, as most stop motion animated films were shot at that time. It's got a runtime of about 6 minutes. Completely shot black and white. Now, when I say shot black and white, it was shot on color stock film, as were his next two movies. But he animates them in black and white. Doesn't use any color. It immediately has like this classic stop motion animation feel to it. I really think that's just amazing. It's depressing, but it highlights like the monotone nature of the way that he deals with these things. And he has like this sepia tint
on everything too. Like there's not color to any of these movies really, and if there is, it's not bright or vibrant at all. It's just they're very dull to look at.
Like very, very static, very minimalistic. Like I said a little bit at the top about the plot of this one, it deals with this uncle, but it's actually based off of like a combination of his 8 uncles when he was growing up. This totally sets the tone for like the rest of his movies. He's got this dry Aussie humor that he uses throughout of it that's really genuinely morbid, and uses a lot of like not cruel terminology, but really well highlights just the mistreating of a lot of people. This movie is still incredibly popular at film festivals, particularly in retrospectives about Elliot's work. He won Best Animated Short at the Australian Film Awards for this, and that continued into his next movie, Cousin, which was actually funded by the Australian Film Institute. This is his first professional film, and this is right out of school. He once again focuses on a narrator telling the story of a close relative, this time his cousin, a young man plagued by cerebral palsy. This is narrated by one of his longtime co-workers, who was actually replaced by Jeffrey Rush by the time he gets around to Harvey Crumpet. But this is, what was his name? William McInnes is the name of the guy that narrated the first 3. Cousin was shot in grayscale, it was shot on color stock with grayscale colors, in a facility owned by his father, like a factory facility owned by his father. It just true like this isn't a rags to riches story. This is a story of somebody using every resource that they have. But this is based on his real life cousin, who also had cerebral palsy, and I love the way that he focuses on stuff like that.
This was just like, also, I mean, short films are something that I'm very new to, and I'm so amazed every time at just how much people can do with so little time.
Yeah, it's very...
And like Zach said, this is like a 3-minute and like 48-second short, and you feel every second of it. It's so good.
Yeah, this one came out in 98, 2 years after his last project, and had a total budget of $42,000. Definitely got a bump from his last one. Probably a lot less personal funding since he was working with the Australian Film Institute at this point. But he ended up winning his second AFI award for this one, for Best Australian Animation. So that moves us into the third and conclusive story of his immediate family documentary trilogy. This one's 8 minutes long. It's called Brother. Came out in 1999, the following year. This is the conclusion, like I said, of his trilogy, but it focuses on a boy and his brother as they introduce their lives. Now, Elliot has talked about how in this story he is the brother. He is the one that the story is focusing on, and it's a much more personal feeling. It's really true to life, and just like he wears these glasses that one eye is blacked out in order for, quote unquote, to let his other eye catch up. And that's like a lot of that type of humor where it's just really sad. I mean, it's just really sad to just see the way that people misunderstood these kind of issues. Like, they just didn't have the resources on hand to fully deal with them. It's very, very charming. I don't know. Every time I see one of these little bits about how he treats somebody with Tourette's or somebody with Asperger's, he approaches it with this unbridled charm that is also very pointed. And just make sure that we don't forget the way that once upon a time society treated these people. But this one was made in a friend's spare bedroom above a falafel shop in Fitzroy, Melbourne, and it was edited on a Steenbeck. He completely rejected to use a computer. This was about the time that digital photography was getting really hotly used in stop motion animation, but he wanted to do this.
I thought you said it was edited on a Steam Deck, and I was like, they had those back then?
Yeah, he was running it on Linux.
I was mind blowing.
Yeah, he was playing Batman Arkham Asylum and
and editing Brother.
Yeah, this one went on to win 2 AFI awards and was budgeted at $52,000, so in another increase in his budget. Moving on, this is his biggest one yet, Harvey Crumpet, which came out in 2003. This one took a long time to complete. They were shooting about 5 to 10 seconds of footage a day, from what I was reading in this one, but this is his foray into color. He starts actually using colored clay in this film in particular, and it follows the life of Harvek Milos Krumpecki, a Polish-Australian man with Tourette's, and it just the quick tale of his life and how he finds mental freedom in just expressing himself the ways that he wants to, how he finds love, how he finds that he is not somebody that can be classically educated, but he learns about the world through facts, which he spells F-A-K-T-S, and keeps them in a little book around his neck. And throughout the course of this movie, it's broken up by some of the facts getting posted on the screen. And there's some good ones, like alcohol can cause drunkenness and nudity, and just cheery little bits like that.
And there's one of my favorite little things from this short was right after he finds this woman and he starts dating her and gets married to her. Her pets don't like him, and he says something about it, and then it just cuts to the next fact, and it says, "Love does not conquer all." Yeah,
and from that, in true Elliot form, it goes from that to him and his wife trying to conceive a child and finding out that they can't, which is just the backhanded nature of all these things. It's perfectly comedic, and then it turns into something that is so somber it'll make you tear up. It's really just great, but you can see his stories getting more complex and diverse throughout this. That they just turn into this dynamic shifting of storytelling where he's just really going through the roof with all this, and they function as wider spanning journeys through whole lives of people as opposed to just snapshots of his experiences. this marks the first time that he moved into digital software. Now, I can't remember when The Nightmare Before Christmas came out, but I believe that whatever the stop motion animation tools were used in digital software, where they could now
93.
Okay, so we're well and truly past that. Maybe he just preferred to classically animate until that point. But this basically, for people that more or less know how movies are shot, dailies are the scenes that you've shot over the course of the day, and they take a while to develop, to color grade, all that kind of stuff. I think dailies are actually just the raw footage. They don't actually get color graded or edited in any way, shape, or form. You just look at the dailies. But this is before he had made his previous movies without being able to look at dailies. So he wasn't able to look at any of his work while he was doing it. This marked the change in that. This is when he was able to take a picture, look at the picture, take the next frame, look at the next frame, and then play them back one by one and start seeing how it just flowed together. So there's a lot more like intimate detail in the animations in these. That's not to say his earlier stuff does look pretty rudimentary, but it's still got like this beautiful stop motion charm to it.
There's definitely a massive improvement between his Little Family trilogy and Harvey Crumpet, though. Yeah. Even in those 4 years. The software that they use for this completely revolutionized stop motion as well. But yeah, this one got a big bump in budget, and it much paid off. The budget increased to 380,000 Australian dollars at that point, which allowed for some more star power. This is the one that Jeffrey Rush narrated, replacing longtime collaborator William McInnes. But Jeffrey Rush just an incredible job in this, and that's a consistent theme too. Like the voice performances in these are outstanding. Perfectly, the first three are very somber. Rush's performance in this is very eccentric and somber when it needs to be, and that continues into his next one, which is Mary and Max. Before I go on to Mary and Max, I do want to note that this one, the Academy Award, Harvey Crumpet won the Academy Award for Best Short Animation and was named one of the top 100 animated films of all time, coming in at 22 minutes long. It's powerful. It's really great stuff. And these first four that I'm talking about, they are all available for you to go look on YouTube. I've actually got a playlist with all four of these movies. Plus, so I'm going to put that playlist in the comments of this post, of this description, whatever you want to call it. So you guys, I'm telling you, it is worth just sitting through these really quickly and checking them out. Okay, let's move on to Mary and Max. This is his first feature film.
This is his first full-length film. This came out in 2009, 6 years after Harvey Crumpet. And, if you know anything about stop-motion animation, it takes that long to make this shit. It's truly just a labor of love and dedication to put this stuff together. But this premiered at Sundance in 2009 to massive acclaim. It's now listed on IMDb as one of the highest rated films of all time, one of the top 250 films of all time.
Well deserving.
Definitely. It follows the life of Mary, an outcast 8-year-old girl from an unconcerned and dismissive family, her mother struggles with addiction, alcoholism in particular, and she starts writing letters to Max, a mentally disabled 44-year-old man living in New York City who's a total loner. There's some star power behind this one, and it starts in 1976 and spans decades of their relationship.
I have to kind of give a little backstory for us before you.
Oh yeah, tell.
Okay. We come home from Memoir of a Snail. Lives changed. We immediately start looking into Adam Elliot. Zach finds this movie. We turn it on. We're about 20 minutes in when my brain is ticking. I am famous for being, I know that voice, I know that actor, I have to find out who it is. Philip Seymour Hoffman.
It's our boy.
It's our guy.
Our boy.
Philip Seymour Hoffman is Max, and then you have Toni Collette as Mary.
Yeah, there's Eric Bana is also in this movie, but Toni Collette and Philip Seymour Hoffman are off the chain. This Philip Seymour Hoffman is really, really good in this, in the way that
when is he not?
Yeah, truly. This is clearly towards the point that he's really starting to struggle in his personal life. And I mean, this is before The Master, and a lot of stuff happens, but he he plays this so well. Like Max is a very distinct character, and there's a very important characteristic to Max that has to do with mental disability that I will not divulge because it's a big part of the plot of this movie. But he has this perfect way of like being incredibly literal and comedic and just hard to listen to at the same time. There's a part where he's writing his first letter back to Mary, and he's telling him about her life, or telling her about his life, and he's just continuously like bringing up tragic aspects of his life. He's like, my mother shot herself when she was 8 years old. Do you like skydiving?
Like, it's so great, and the way that he voices this is also so, like...
Yeah, I, like, that whole sequence of him writing the first letter to her is, like, smile, frown, smile, frown, smile, frown. And in between each, like, this is not accurate to the character at all, but it just feels like he's taking, like, a big draw of a cigarette. He's like... Oh, man.
You like skydiving, like, it just...
He's so great. So... Toni Collette, I was trying to look this up the other day to see how this was made. I need to go a little bit further down the rabbit hole on this, but I wasn't sure how she did the voice of young Mary, but if she does the voice of young Mary, she does like an impressive kid's voice. I'm sure they just pitched up her voice in some capacity, but by the time it gets around to her being like a young woman, it's very, very good stuff. This movie is incredibly moving. The end of it will make you cry. I don't care who you are. You could be the hardest guy on the road. It'll definitely hit you. They find each other to be like this thread through which they both understand the world. They're both outcasts, and they just like they continuously ask each other questions and advice, and more dealing with the mistreatment of like mentally disabled people in the 70s and 80s, and just mistreating is so hard to say because it was just misunderstood at that time, but people just did not have the resources to correctly deal with this, and so they just chose to go with like the worst possible options to quote unquote heal these things. There's a really important point in this. I can't spoil it. I can't spoil like the midway point of the movie. Okay. This movie is relatively hard to find. The only place I could find it that was streaming for rental was Apple TV Plus. So if you have Apple TV, it's about $4 on there. If you don't, I have it on Blu-ray. Call me. I will give it to you on Blu-ray. This movie is 100% worth checking out. The next project he did was Ernie Biscuit, which is a 2015 short film, but I haven't seen this one. We didn't catch this one before we got to do this podcast, so I will be getting around to that, I promise. And then Memoir of a Snail. This is his most recent one. You heard me and Emily talk about it a couple of weeks ago. It follows the life of Gracie Poodell and her brother Gilbert through their lives as they're posed with challenges to their relationship and separation. This one has Sarah Snook as Grace, the main character, and Cody Smith McPhee as Gilbert, and it's tragic and touching, and it
sad, beautiful, tragic.
Deals with just Elliot's consistent themes the whole way through. I mean, like I said at the top of this, he's really big into pets, and almost every single one of his movies or films features like birds or cats or snails or something like that.
I don't think that there's, except for maybe one of his shorts, I don't think there's something I've seen of his that hasn't had snails in it.
Yeah, and he just loves them. The way that he crafts them is just so charming.
Yes.
You
feel like every bit of his niches, like, and everything that he's passionate about is in all of his movies. And
he is so authentically
his obsessions,
himself.
That's something like, I think you might have said this earlier, but like his obsessions that are the obsessions in his film. Like, so many people have certain obsessions with things. Like, in Harvey Crumpet, his mom is obsessed with counting her fingers, and like just all these little weird these oddities.
Or
and
Mary and Max is obsessed with chocolate. Like, he just loves chocolate, so they send each other like different kinds of chocolate throughout the years. Truly, like, if you do not know anything about Adam Elliot, I looked into him earlier. He's way smaller than he should be. This guy should...
only 12,000 followers on Instagram?
Yeah.
Come on,
this guy deserves
people.
every accolade he can get. I really, really think that some of his stuff is truly some of the best stuff I've ever seen. And just
Have you
going down the
heard
rabbit hole
any?
on him this week.
Have you heard any Oscar buzz about Memoir? About it getting any animated?
Not a peep. Here's the deal. We got the big Pixar release this year with
I know.
Inside Out 2, and we got the Wild Robot, which are going to be the two top contending movies for that.
Not even a nomination though.
Yeah, but I don't know. I haven't heard anything.
Yeah.
The nominations haven't come out yet though, so
No, I know, but you don't even think.
I hope
just buzz is what I'm saying.
That's my vote. I mean, I really genuinely think that is a far more important movie to filmmaking than either The Wild Robot or Inside Out 2. And I liked The Wild Robot. I liked The Wild Robot a pretty damn good bit. And
But Memoir of a Snail was probably... We've seen a lot of movies this year. I think this is my favorite movie we've seen in theaters this year.
I would almost concur had Anora not come out last weekend. I think that's been my favorite watch this year. But
I think I liked Memoir of a Snail better, but that's just me.
Yeah, hey, we're here.
And
for
I love it. I
personal
mean, I went to
opinion.
see Anora last night again.
Yeah. It's interesting because just going back to The Wild Robot versus Memoir of a Snail for a second. The Wild Robot really clearly deals with themes of unity, of like motherhood, connectivity as a whole, like getting over our differences and coming together, which I think is a very important theme of this day and age. But Memoir of a Snail deals with like personal connection. It's not simmered down to be accessible for children.
That's what I was going to say. Here's my biggest thing. Wild Robot is a kid's movie. Mm-hmm. Memoir of a Snail is not. Yeah. Memoir of a Snail is for people who kind of like... you know what you're going for with Wild Robot. Yeah. And very beautiful story. Very touching story. I loved it a lot. I really did enjoy it.
I definitely enjoyed it. And
it's a kid's movie.
Yeah.
And you can still get enjoyment out of it as an adult, but... God, Memoir of a Snail.
Thematically, just as somebody that, just devours film, that's one of the best things I've seen in a while. I think this is magical. And for that to have sparked my journey to go down this rabbit hole on Elliot, who is just a genius. He's an expert. He knows exactly what he wants to get across. He uses his screen time like a madman. I mean, he is so unbelievably well educated about how he wants to tell his stories and what stories he wants to tell. Really,
a cool thing about claymation is you don't get an opportunity to trim any fat.
No, I mean,
you have to know you have to storyboard so well to know exactly what you're doing and follow that vision through.
It takes an insane amount of effort to make a project like this, and I'm not saying that it doesn't to make any other movie or even The Wild Robot, which I know how brutal those animation studios can be.
We're not trashing The Wild Robot,
no, not by any stretch, but I'm just saying the effort that it takes to make this is a notch above. This is amazing stuff, and I really I just wanted to make sure that you guys knew about this guy because he is 100% somebody that I'm going to truly just cherish and treasure for the rest of my
by no means an underground director, but one that is not widely recognized enough.
Yeah, I think this one, if you haven't heard of him, if you haven't seen any of his works, check him out. You will be pleasantly surprised by it. So that's more or less.
I just want to give a disclaimer real quick.
Hit it.
We've said this, and I know that we mentioned Memoir of a Snail, not a kid's movie. This stuff typically does range on the more adult side of the spectrum. Yeah, do not be fooled by the claymation and innocent looking nature of it.
Yeah, I talked about it kind of at the top, but it deals with alcoholism, it deals with suicide, it deals with depression, it deals with nudity. There's a lot of
this is very heavy. It's heavy stuff. It's adult themes for sure.
And I think that's what's so magical about it is the jarringness of seeing that stuff in a movie like this. I think is just
one of my favorite words, juxtaposition.
It really just, I don't know. There's been a lot of points in my life where I've just been told that shit's for kids, and this is not. It is
which is
truly a league of its own.
And it's just so cool to be able to see something format used untraditionally to reach a different audience.
For sure. And it's cool to discover it. You get the opportunity to, I watched Max and Mary last night. Emily and I watched it the night that we got home from Memoir of a Snail. We didn't finish it. We were both just so emotionally drained from Memoir of a Snail that Emily fell asleep and I turned it off about midway through. But I finished it out last night and I was just blown away by it, and I went on his like IMDb and just started scrolling through his short films, and I was like, oh hey, those are all on YouTube, and I started watching one by one, and I was like, I can't fall asleep until I've seen every one of these, and I think you will feel the same way if you start going down this rabbit hole. So I highly recommend, if you have the place to rent it, start with Max and Mary, start with his more recent stuff, and just work your way back, because that will really just like flesh out your influence of him.
Memoir of a Snail is still in theaters.
Yeah, it is still in theaters. If you can find it playing, I think it's worth it. I'm definitely going to be getting this on physical copy when it comes out. I'll get it on digital, if not on physical, but you guys got to check out Adam Elliot. So major kudos, major love to Adam Elliot. Way to go, you sweet man. And yeah, that's about it. So let's wrap this up.
Yeah,
let's see. What are we seeing this weekend?
We got our roundup coming up. I believe I'll be seeing Wicked at some point. If not this weekend, then next. I know we're seeing Gladiator next weekend.
Yeah,
not
Gladiator
this weekend.
will be next weekend, so we'll cover that on the following week's podcast. We're saving that one for our brother-in-law and sister, who are very excited to come check it out with us. You might hear them on the pod on that weekend roundup. I'm very much looking forward to that. So we'll
we'll find out what else we're seeing. I really don't have anything planned.
Movies. Yeah, it's pretty quiet. I think I'm going to go see Real Pain at some point. That is playing. That's one I've been anticipating for a while. Jesse Eisenberg, Kieran Culkin, just mashing it out in Poland. But yeah, you guys...
Are you sure you don't want to go see Red One?
I thought about it, and then I saw the numbers that it did, and I was like, now I really want to go see it. Hello, people. I love you. Please don't go see Red One. Yeah, that's all I got to say about that. So let's kick it. Let's call it an evening.
Yes,
you guys are the best.
Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening all the way through to this, and go check out Adam Elliot as soon as you can. Like I said, I'll be putting the link to my playlist, and
I'll be watching your letterbox.
Yeah, you better be logging. People. You better be logging this. So, check out Adam Elliot. Love the people around you. Support everybody. Let's come together in this trying time of humanity and be better as a whole.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Planes, Trains, and Automobiles. Mom, Dad, thank you for coming over tonight. Danny,
thanks for the pizza. It was great.
Thanks to Danny. Danny and I are watching a movie tomorrow night, so stay tuned for that.
Maybe we'll put that on the roundup. Who knows?
You never know. All right, folks. God bless you. May we all have a happy Thanksgiving.
Be well. Well, happy Thanksgiving. You're just jumping the gun with Thanksgiving.
Girl, I'm still recovering from the festival.
We all are.
All right. Buenos noches, señores.
Be well.
Señoritas.